I will. Thank you, Allison. Welcome everybody to our second ever Night Matters meeting. Thank you all so much for being here today. It's great to see everybody's faces. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Betty Maya Foote, and I'm IDA's Director of Engagement. I've been working here for about 4 years, and it's definitely my dream job. And my favorite part of this job is seeing everyone's beautiful faces from all around the world and connecting with this incredible global network of dark sky advocates. So thank you for being here and for joining our very important conversation today on light justice. If you have not already, please pop a hello in the chat with where you are calling in from today. I am in snowy Moab, Utah, and then I will pass it over to Allison to introduce herself, who is in snowy Tucson.
Hi, I'm Allison Bressler. I'm the DevOps manager, which really just means that I get to say thank you a lot and show a lot of gratitude to everybody who are our donors. I do a lot of donor relations and donor stewardship work. So yeah, I'm very excited to kind of bring together two very interesting groups, our donors and our advocates, and hopefully we can get a lot more advocacy work done since we can't do this work without everybody here, since we have such a small staff. So very excited to see so many people here today.
Yeah, and thank you, Allison. Allison has been really spearheading these meetings, and we're super excited to be able to bring various aspects of light pollution to our broader community and connect everybody. If you have not already, please mute yourself so that we can focus on the presentation today. And I will introduce our very exciting speaker, Lya Shaffer Osborn, who you may recognize from our community engagement panel at the Under One Sky conference. And if you missed her there, we're really excited to have her back here, highlighting her great work with the light justice community. So Lya is a multidisciplinary designer, writer, and advocate for design justice. She is a co-founder of lightjustice.org, which is a community resource for addressing the social impact of lighting. She also serves as the North America Regional Director for Unili Lighting Design. Did I say that right?
Yes,
well,
Unili.
Okay, Unili, thank you. Where for the past 7 years, she has contributed to a wide range of projects and award-winning design efforts on both sides of the Pacific. Lya received a double M.F.A. in lighting design and interior design from Parsons The New School for Design, where her thesis work challenged the industry norms and incentives that have long defined a designer's role in community and proposed alternative modes of improving accessibility of design resources to the historically underserved. Lya is a member of the International Association of Lighting Designers and the Illuminating Engineering Society, and is community-friendly lighting certified. I didn't actually know that was a certification, but that sounds like one of the coolest certifications. So maybe you could tell us a little more about that, and I will turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to see all the places that you all are listening in from today. I am going to go ahead and see if I can pull up my slides. So please give me a moment. Let's see. Several years into multiple Zoom calls, you'd think this would be a little quicker. All right. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you for that lovely introduction. And I'm glad that you called out the community lighting certification or community friendly lighting certification, because that is currently one of the top things I'd recommend for anybody working in lighting design is to get community friendly lighting certified. Wonderful guy, Bob Parks, who's a friend, runs the community friendly lighting program. So I will be mentioning at the very end as sort of part of what the lighting industry is trying to do internally to address issues of equity and environmental advocacy in light. So let's see here. Okay. So, okay, good afternoon or morning, wherever you are on this beautiful planet. As Betty Maya introduced, I'm Lya Shaffer Osborn. I'm a lighting designer, a writer and a community advocate above all. Together with my fellow lighting designers, Edward Bartholomew and Mark Loeffler, I helped to found the resource lightjustice.org, which seeks to make available information and resources supporting the social and environmental advocacy around light. And that's within the lighting industry, and also trying to make resources available to communities that want to advocate for themselves, or to advocates like you who are better understanding as we go the impact of light on our environment and on our communities. So our conversation in light justice began, in 2020 when Edward, my colleague, realized that as a Black man working for decades in a predominantly white lighting industry, and witnessing the momentous social justice actions responding to the tragic murders of George Floyd and others, it felt like he needed to take some kind of action in the industry. And this for him included a critical look at the implicit impact of racism on the practice of lighting. This led to conversations with his friend and colleague, Mark, and then I joined them in 2021 after hearing them speak on light justice. On my end, I've been practicing international lighting design after obtaining my graduate degree. And in 2020, I was finding it increasingly difficult to square the admittedly beautiful world of luxury lighting design with my own sense of responsibility and involvement in my local community and on our shared planet. My own interest in lighting design stemmed from a personal experience with poorly designed light in the public sector, where I could observe without a technical background in it, but also without question, that lighting does have a psychological and physiological impact on human health. Several years later, I moved from a career in Asian American relations and diplomacy to lighting and interior design. Pretty big flip, you would think. But that was because I realized that I wanted to learn how to solve the problems that subtly surround us and inevitably impact us in our built environment. For instance, I saw poorly designed, thoughtless light impacting high-level discussions between international delegations. I saw people falling asleep. I saw lack of access to daylight gradually wearing away at the morale of government workers. And I felt my own frustration at the inability to articulate what the problem is and how to fix it. And I suspect that all of you are here today because you've recognized the impact that light has on the environment, on how you feel, on the natural world, and that's sort of what moved you to take action. So one of the problems in our built environment, as well as without, is light. It's either not enough of it, it's too much of it, the wrong kind of it, or the inability to control it. And I think overall, it's simply not knowing how to talk about it. And the moment we start being able to talk about where the problems are, we are able to come together and figure out how to fix them. Let's see. So apologies, technical difficulties there. Okay. So as you all know, sorry.
Oh, you're good. I think someone
might
was
not be
unmuted.
Yeah. So as you all clearly know, light is a potent symbol. We all know the phrase, let there be light. As any organism on this planet with sight would feel, I think, light feels sometimes like a beginning. Light has historically, across cultures and languages, been held as a symbol of knowledge, truth, and justice. And yet we know here that light can be too much. It must be balanced. We are told as children not to look directly into the sun, for instance. It's tempting to test our courage against the nearest star, but we couldn't possibly win a staring contest against our planet's primary energy source. And just as the changing seasons remind and reassure us of the balance of our natural world, the shift from day to night, from night to day, is a rhythm that replenishes us even as it energizes us, carrying us forward. Light is a positive force primarily when we can trust that it will be balanced by darkness. So this comes to what we have been working on in Light Justice, trying to better give language to how light impacts us. We believe that everyone deserves both good light and beneficial darkness. Well-designed, high-quality lighting is today a signifier of prosperity and privilege. So for this purpose today, let's define good lighting as visually appealing, environmentally responsible, and socially beneficial light. Good lighting we can then consider to be a long-term investment in the value of a building or a space or a neighborhood, a county, a country. Now, I'm going to dial back a little bit, and I think it would be helpful today to offer you a little bit of a background and kind of the history of how light has been used in unjust ways. We found in research that marginalized communities frequently suffer from poor lighting, which can be visually distressing, environmentally harmful, and socially detrimental. This is part of infrastructural racism with persistent historic roots. And when we recognize this inequity, we can begin addressing it just as, recognizing poor lighting, recognizing impact on our environment. Once we recognize it, we can begin addressing it with a more inclusive planning and design approach to help revitalize these under-resourced places with good lighting. Isabella Critora, in an article called "The Public Lighting and Urban Wealth Gap," said, "Light's ability to characterize space as either appealing or unappealing furthers divisions that already exist between rich and poor." So some very encouraging inroads have been made in trying to address these issues. This may look familiar to you all. This was a set of design principles developed in a collaboration between the Illumination Engineering Society and the Dark Sky Association to offer a standardized approach to outdoor lighting at night. And if this isn't totally familiar to you, I have this printed out, and it's such a great resource to return to, and also to start a conversation with somebody who hasn't been thinking about light in this way. So we believe that all light should have a clear purpose. Light should be directed only to where needed. Light should be no brighter than necessary. Light should be used, sorry, oh my goodness, technical difficulty here. There we go. I can't actually see all of my slide. I sincerely apologize. Actually, Betty Maya, would you mind reading those last two, controlled and color? Light should be used only when?
Yes, light should be used only when it's useful. So use controls such as timers or motion sensors to ensure that light is available when it is needed, dimmed when possible, and turned off when not needed. And then as dark sky people, we all know about the color, but use warmer color lights where possible and limit the amount of shorter wavelength light.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Okay, so let's look at beneficial darkness then, if we are recognizing what useful light is and what these standards should be. Beneficial darkness, we often see in our environment in natural spaces, these natural spaces which we're trying so hard to preserve, but also they tend to be in affluent neighborhoods. These often have appropriate darkness balanced with visually comfortable outdoor lighting at night. Meanwhile, marginalized neighborhoods tend to lack shade and suffer substandard lighting at night, which denies them the benefits of nighttime darkness. And it's really getting worse. To quote the anthropologist Celeste Henry of UT Austin, "Many practices of illumination framed by notions of social progress are complicit, if not active participants, in a devitalizing racialization of space. Indeed, in the US, the urban poor, the Black, and the brown, corralled in the inner city by processes of white flight and racial criminalization, have suffered under this trajectory of illumination. Collectively, we appear to be creating a humanity that is slowly cut off from its connection to the wild, to the sensory and cyclical, to the cosmic, and boldly to each other." Now, the trajectory of weaponizing illumination has deep historical roots. One of these is the lantern laws, which represent an early attempt to use light at night to police Black bodies through racialized surveillance. In her book, Dark Matters, Simone Brown states, Lantern laws were 18th century laws in New York City that demanded that Black, mixed race, and indigenous enslaved people carry lanterns with them if they walked around the city after sunset while not in the company of a white person. This law laid out punishments for those who failed to carry this signal, and any white person was deputized to stop and question them. Another way that the nighttime movement of Black bodies has been historically oppressed was through sundown towns. These were all white communities, neighborhoods, or counties which excluded Blacks and other minorities through the use of discriminatory laws, harassment, and threats, or use of violence to control nocturnal behavior. The name derives from the posted and verbal warnings issued to Blacks that although they might be allowed to work or travel in a community during the day, they were required to leave by sundown. Historians now estimate that there were up to 10,000 sundown towns in the US between 1890 all the way up to 1960, mostly in the Midwest, but also in the Northeast, including Massachusetts and Connecticut. The Green Book, which you may have heard about in a recent documentary, was a published guide for African Americans to navigate the country and avoid sundown towns in order to find friendly lodging. Now, this leads us to today, where we can continue to see the legal framework for oppressive policies like stop and frisk that were established well before the contemporary era. So in the research that we've been doing in light justice, we've also been looking at a contributor to these systemic inequalities called redlining. If you aren't familiar with redlining, it was a practice that began in the 1930s to categorize certain areas of cities as high credit risk, often on the basis of the residents' race or ethnicity. This led to the denial of loan applications from creditworthy borrowers simply because they resided in those neighborhoods. While the practice was outlawed in 1968, its effects have persisted over decades and continue to impact gaps in wealth and home ownership. In fact, 3 out of 4 neighborhoods redlined on government maps 80 years ago continue to struggle economically today. This here is a map that we've been putting together with some researchers in Seattle to look at the areas where historical redlining continues to impact social vulnerability. And bringing it back to lighting, we've found that there are very clear overlaps between the overlit areas that do not have beneficial darkness at night and those historically redlined neighborhoods. So I think one takeaway from the past couple of years of research that we found is the data is out there. There is so much, there is just so much to dig into, and research has only just begun to draw a lot of these connections for us between history and how neighborhoods are impacted today by light. So to quote founder of the environmental justice movement, Dr. Bullard, it is the right of all individuals to have a safe, clean, livable, and sustainable environment. The goal is not to allow artificial characteristics such as race, class, or geography to impede that right. Pardon 1 second. And Betty, I apologize. I might actually have to exit my slides and come back in. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I need to pull this up here. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to speak a little bit more now to the intersection between environmental justice and social justice. Environmental justice is an important part of the struggle to improve and maintain a clean and healthful environment, especially for those who have traditionally lived, worked, or played closest to the sources of environmental pollution. The Environmental Protection Agency offers definitions for the environmental justice challenges that impact communities of color. The list includes lead contamination, unhealthy drinking water, dangerous air quality, and hazardous waste site exposure. As yet, however, overexposure to harmful lighting is not listed. So for us, this raises urgent questions about how together we can understand and address environmental justice inequities which directly involve light. We can ask what and when and how does lighting have an impact on environmental justice? How can we address the harm caused by this environmental justice? And how especially can environmental justice proponents come together with advocates for social equity and can begin to build momentum and add our voices not only to the groups who are asking for systemic change, but also in our local communities? How can we learn to advocate as individuals and together for environmentally just and socially just light? This is probably a very familiar map to you all. We all know here that light pollution is absolutely inequitable. It threatens the legacy of night skies that we want to share with future generations. And in a landmark study called Light Pollution Inequities in the Continental United States, a distributive environmental justice analysis, researchers absolutely concluded that light pollution is a clear environmental health hazard. We're going to take a quick break to watch this little video that Edward took. Sort of a night light walk. This was taken with his cousin, looking at the impact and the sort of feeling of lighting at night. And what they were doing in this part of Baltimore was to understand how light makes you feel in your body as a pedestrian as you're walking through the streets. So for instance, and here, apologies for the audio here. So now we're looking at street lighting, which is designed to illuminate the road for vehicles rather than designed to make pedestrians feel safe, not designed for pedestrians to be able to recognize each other's faces. And so you can see here, the lighting doesn't illuminate bodies and in fact, backlights them. It allows, it makes it actually feel kind of less safe as you're walking down the street if you can't see the expression on somebody's face. We also see instances where street lighting leaks into people's houses. We see high intensity lighting around commercial areas, which then create intense visual contrast on the streets and sidewalks so that the eye doesn't have time to adjust between the commercial building facade and the sidewalk where maybe you're encountering somebody or you're walking from one place to another. So I think it's worth, maybe just for a moment, just looking at these images, looking at this footage, and sort of thinking like, as you're walking through a space at night, how is it making your body feel? Does it make you feel like that place is welcome? Does it make you feel like that place, is it inviting you in or pushing you away? Does it feel like you're being surveilled, or does it feel like, maybe you are being asked to stay longer? So one example that we found of surveillance lighting that absolutely has a detrimental effect on the community around it is omnipresence. Omnipresence is an NYPD, a New York Police program, which after the outlawing of stop and frisk, installed diesel generator powered floodlights in certain neighborhoods around the city. ostensibly as a temporary measure to sort of support policing efforts there. Now, these, as you can see in this photo, these are the sorts of lights that get brought in, say if there's a natural disaster and they need to temporarily bring floodlights into an area to light it for safety and to take care of people. We also see these on the sides of highways for highway construction. I mean, these, as lighting technology goes, these are not designed for people. These are designed purely to cast as much light in as many directions as possible. And so, you know, as a temporary measure, these were sort of brought in without, you know, without question and without sort of any need for approval from other parts of the city to just say, you know, we need more light here. We'll use this seems like a good use of an available tool. Now, the problem is, firstly, not only is the light oppressive, as you can see, it's not designed for neighborhoods. But between the diesel generators, which cause a lot of noise pollution and air pollution, the residents in these areas found it to be deeply disruptive to the way that they were able to use their communities, even to how they slept. A Brownsville housing resident, that we actually, some colleagues of ours did studies in some of these communities that were impacted by these. They're still up, by the way, there are hundreds of these still up in New York City. But Brownsville housing residents have described it as overwhelming. They say the light shines into people's rooms, coming in through blinds, making it hard for them to sleep. They never turn off. The buzz from the generators is incessant and never stops. You can see here, you know, they're not designed for human eyes really long term. And again, one major issue is that they are so high intensity that they create increased contrast with the darker areas around them. They wash everything out. And the fact is that the science of the human eye, our eyes need time to adjust. And when you're looking at this kind of a bright source, just as if you were staring at the sun for a moment, your body actually feels a little disoriented for a while. And it can take, you know, it can actually take up to an hour for your body to fully settle back in to the state before. So why does this persist? Why are these still up? Well, unfortunately, part of it is the common sense kind of argument, right? That if we have nonviolent tools that we can use, you know, to make our communities safer, then maybe these are the best option. But studies are coming out that oppressive light actually does have a real impact on human health long term, as well as you all know, an impact on the natural environment and ultimately a contributor to that pervasive problem of light pollution. One study that came out in 2019 from the University of Chicago Crime Lab tried to reinforce the effectiveness of light as a tool for policing. It was not peer reviewed, but it did receive a lot of press, I think, from other cities who were looking for similar solutions and were hoping to find a simple one. The study was called Reducing Crime Through Environmental Design, Evidence from a Randomized Experiment of Street Lighting in New York City. They concluded that street lighting, even accounting conservatively for potential spillovers, street lighting reduces outdoor nighttime index crimes by somewhere around 36%. Now, the problem with this study is that it failed to account for other factors. So they failed to account for the fact that often police cars are parked right next to these generators. So not only are the lights themselves sort of a signifier of police presence, but there are often, police vehicles right there as well, reinforcing that. They also failed to account for the fact that crime would sometimes move elsewhere. So it wasn't that it was reducing crime, but in fact, it was simply moving it away temporarily and not in any sort of a permanently effective way. Omnipresence has been perceived by residents now for many years as hostile and stigmatizing. They say that it feels as though their neighborhoods are rendered into permanent crime scenes, and it's not comfortable to just go out and for people to sit together and chat at night in parks. It's often these are put next to playgrounds, and it ends up being more oppressive than it is helpful. With respect to the promise of permanent lighting as a scalable and cost-effective crime reduction strategy, so say replacing these generator-powered lights with better street lighting, that's where we've been running into issues where everybody can agree that that would be more ideal, but these are under-resourced communities already. And so the inertia to mobilize public funds to address these issues in these neighborhoods is very difficult. Okay. I'm doing a quick time check. I want to make sure that there's enough time for questions later.
You're great, and we could listen to you talk all day, so keep going.
So I want to sort of end the history and the introduction to unjust lighting currently in use in our communities with this quote. Systems of oppression, injustices, and inequities are designed. Therefore, they can be redesigned. And that's where I think the work that you all are doing and the work that we, along with you and Light Justice, are doing, and with, frankly, and very encouragingly, many other organizations in the lighting industry, looking at social equity, looking at environmental equity, and realizing that there's so much overlap there. We're looking at how to redesign these systems, starting with what they're composed of, starting with individuals, starting with neighborhoods, starting with the technology that gets used in them. So I wanted to share a little bit about this process of redesigning, and I'll go just through this really quick. The Design Justice organization has been looking at ways to incorporate community input and also environmental and social equity in the design process. I feel that these are some of the resources that we offer on lightjustice.org to both people in the design industry, but also to community members and advocates like you, because the more that we're able to understand where the work is and kind of how to change the process, the more we can share this information and advocate for each other. So the design justice principles are that firstly, we use design to sustain, heal, and empower our communities, as well as to seek liberation from exploitative and oppressive systems. Principle 2, we center the voices of those who are directly impacted by the outcomes of the design process. And that's meaningful rather than sort of glossing over and saying, okay, here's the target audience, or here are the people who are impacted. Let's do some quick research and some data on it. We're bringing those voices into the design process. We prioritize design's impact on the community over the intentions of the designer. We view change as emergent from an accountable, accessible, and collaborative process, rather than as a point at the end of a process. We see the role of the designer as a facilitator rather than an expert. And Betty Maya, I apologize again. Would you mind reading principles 6 through 10? I can't actually see this on the screen right now.
So principle 6, we believe that everyone is an expert.
Or does anybody want to pop in and volunteer to read principles 6 through 10? We could popcorn it, each person.
Oh, I like that idea. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll take number 6.
No? Okay. Well, I'll let you all read these, and I will be sharing my slides after if anybody wants to see these. Also, these are available on lightjustice.org, along with a lot of the other resources that I mentioned, including an article that we co-wrote with Ruskin Hartley of IDA on omnipresence. So light justice in practice. We've been reframing our role in community, approaching these issues with collaborative curiosity. And I think it's also important to not, it can be frustrating to see how much progress needs to be made. So finding opportunities for celebration, joy, and creative play are quite meaningful. And I'll be sharing some examples of projects of lighting redesign projects that have brought in the community in an engaged way and also encouraged the use of light to kind of create community joy, kind of just to explore that medium together. So individual actions that can be taken, whether we are directly involved in lighting technology or a community member, it's either sharing the resources that we have, or it's, I would encourage you all, in your local communities. A lot of people don't know that there are lighting designers working in your communities, but they are there. There are lighting design offices. These people are likely to be the biggest nerds about light you've ever met. And so I think building bridges across the dark sky advocates and people who have a technical background in light who can inform you and who can support your work, I think building more of these bridges over time is going to make a huge difference. There are a lot of grassroots projects. Some of the projects that I'll share later involve guerrilla lighting, which is sort of a playful way to term this idea of bringing folks together to do night walks or night light walks. Similar, they can be similar or very different from the walk that Edward did with his cousin before. It can be, on the one hand, sort of a walk through a night neighborhood or several adjacent neighborhoods, just to sort of collectively see, how does it make us feel? Does the lighting work well right now? Can we identify maybe egregious sources of light pollution? Can we identify lighting that is infringing upon, people's nighttime comfort in their homes? And then more playfully to be able to locate a few places in the area to maybe either using flashlights or glow sticks to sort of play with redesigning the light for that area, just to sort of explore, well, what if we all point our flashlights at this facade? What impact does that have? What if we sort of paint with light and create sort of a collective light portrait? So there are grassroots projects that you, wherever you are, could also initiate, bringing people together on a certain night to do a light walk and encouraging them to kind of learn how to talk about what they're seeing. There are studio projects. So again, it's worth reaching out to lighting design firms in your area, because there are folks who are increasingly interested in collaborating on projects, or, if you are wanting to advocate for your own community, if you see something that needs changing, sometimes it really is as simple as connecting the right people. Maybe it's talking to somebody in your city and figuring out, who as a lighting designer or somebody in lighting would be interested in kind of joining you as a voice in advocating for change. And finally, there are industry efforts underway in lighting, which we've been very encouraged by over the past several years, especially since starting lightjustice.org. Behind the scenes, we've been getting more and more interest and support from people all across the lighting industry, from manufacturers, which is a really, that's been pretty major for manufacturers to understand that the technology they're developing and distributing has an impact on communities, has an impact environmentally and socially that they can consider. And then also the standards that we're looking at as an industry, we're trying to adopt and incorporate more standards that address social and environmental inequities. So there's a lot kind of currently underway. And I think the more that the lighting industry and folks like you who are advocates can join forces and share resources, the more quickly we're going to be able to affect change. So I'll just run through these really quickly because I do want a little time to share a few encouraging projects with you. This is light justice in action. So kind of connecting the design justice principles with lighting specifically. And again, I think for folks advocating for dark skies and who believe, as this talk is called, that night matters, I think becoming informed about kind of what you're able to do individually and also where your kind of combined energy, where collective energy can make more of an impact. I think becoming more aware of all this hopefully is encouraging and motivating to you and makes you feel like, it's the problem isn't so big that you can't help to chip away at it. So this is lightjustice.org. We've been adding resources over time. This year, we've found that folks are really interested in the lighting community to have conversations together. We're going to be having some in-person meetings later this year in lighting, but my personal hope is that we bring in more members of the community, more dark sky advocates, more folks who just are aware that lighting can both be a beautiful solution, it can be meaningful, it can be poetic, it can be, like the light that we see in the night sky inspires us. And it can also be technology that's misapplied and really requires our attention and requires a language to address what is wrong and how to fix it. So one project that I love to share is Signal Station North. Now, this was a project in Baltimore where they were looking at this one neighborhood that, historically had been a little under-resourced in a way that, over the decades had a lasting impact on how people just felt on the streets and economically and socially, everything's all tied together, right? So what Signal Station North as a project tried to do was look at the process of redesigning lighting for a neighborhood with direct participation from and involvement of the community from the very beginning to the very end. So this is one of the first, this photo is from one of the first sort of community gatherings that they had to get folks to come out at night and just see how they felt in the city. And then one example of these guerrilla lighting or sort of community lighting night walks, they organized this event called Flash. They chose sites around a neighborhood that people could walk to together. They had volunteers and they had folks, come specifically for that. But they also found that, when you have folks walking around at night exploring and being curious about what light is doing at night, you start to gather a crowd, and it sort of turned into this parade, and folks were, talking about light at night. They were, testing things out, and it was very engaged. And we've seen similar responses to similar projects and exercises, both in the US and there are a lot more in Europe that are happening as well. Here's sort of an example of the path there. It doesn't have to be a very long walk, but they chose certain landmarks to stop by and sort of look at how they might be relit. And then at the very end, there was sort of this collective light painting kind of activity. And this was also a chance to share resources with the community. So they had prepared this guide, which this is available on the Signal Station North website, which is also, there's a link to it from lightjustice.org. Guide to Noticing Light in the Neighborhood. This is something that you could download, you could print out, you could share with the folks in your communities, that you could share online as well with other advocates. But this is offering language for how lighting makes you feel and how lighting technology actually, what impact it has on the area around it. Here's a little bit more of that guide here. And then in addition to Signal Station North, I encourage you to look at a couple other projects that we've linked to. The Gowanus Lighting Project, which looked at the Gowanus neighborhood in Brooklyn, which is very underlit. It's sort of a mixed industrial and residential neighborhood. And again, sort of engage the community to figure out, well, what did the community want, or what did the community feel was lacking in the existing design? And then together sort of created this language for what solutions might make sense, and then worked with the city to figure out how to implement these new designs and new technology. And then again, sort of brought the community in afterward to see how it was working, to respond to certain tests before, that's very important actually, anytime a new proposal comes in, to actually have some example of some new lighting that people can come and see and examine and feel their response to before they're implemented on a larger scale. And then the social light movement in Europe has been going on for several years. And they also have some really wonderful resources, including the Social Light Movement Manifesto, which offers language for how to see how light impacts our night experience, and how we can begin to advocate for better light or less light, as the case may be. So it's been such an honor to speak with you all today. I hope if you come away with anything, it's firstly the sense that yes, night matters. Night matters tremendously. Night is, it's the other half of the day, right? Our daylight and our night experiences are equally important. Lighting technology, because it's been advancing so quickly, I think has been difficult for people to keep up with. And it has been at times good lighting technology has not been accessible in terms of pricing until very recently. So we see this sort of lag where good light continues to be a symbol of privilege. Light can also be used as a tool for oppression if it's misused and misapplied. And when we see instances of that, it really deserves calling out, because light has an impact on human health. It has an impact on the health of our environment. These are intertwined, and cities are often just trying to do the right thing, and applying the tools that they have on hand. But these can't be permanent solutions. Community is where the change begins. It's where the design process needs to keep going back to. And ultimately it's the folks and the environments around them that are being directly impacted by light, who deserve to have a voice in all of this. And finally, I think we're all working towards the same goal, right? Which is to be in greater harmony with our natural world, to be in greater harmony together as individuals, as communities. And so the ways that we can talk about existing injustices and inequities, it gives us a framework for talking about what is possible and where we want to go together. I invite you to join us at lightjustice.org, to reach out to me or to my colleagues, Edward and Mark. This has been an interesting path over the past couple of years working on this in addition to our day-to-day jobs, but it is so meaningful, and it's been such an honor to speak with you all.
Thank you so much, Lya, for this incredible presentation. I really, really, really enjoyed it, and I know everyone here did as well. So thank you for really adding this important dimension and helping us understand how we can all be better advocates for light justice and why it's so important. So incredibly grateful for your time and presentation today. I will pass along some questions that we had in the chat. And if you do have any questions for Lya, please pop them in the chat and I will do my best to ask her in the remaining 10 minutes that we have. So we'll start with Debbie. You know Debbie Moran, and congratulations to Debbie. Just got a Houston, Texas lighting ordinance passed, which Ruskin mentioned was like especially powerful because like you can pretty much do whatever you want in Houston, and the ordinances like aren't very common there. So a huge congratulations to Debbie for her work there. And she says, I am seeing New York's omnipresence being touted by police departments as a success story. But according to the New Yorker article, another part of it was visible police cars, kind of as you mentioned. Has anyone pushed back on the lighting portion? And has anyone even tried good quality lighting in lower income neighborhoods?
That's a great question. And I guess the short answer is yes. There has been pushback. Frustratingly, I think especially because of the timing of the COVID pandemic, a lot of city resources were pulled away from addressing some of these longstanding issues. And I think for omnipresence specifically, this is part of what we've been trying to do just over the past year, and why we worked with Ruskin to write this article, which was recently published in Spanish in Europe. And so it's becoming more accessible. But I mean, there just needs to be more momentum built behind calling for long-term solution. And there have been gradual sort of efforts by New York City, and I'm sure in other cities as well. We've been talking with folks in Chicago, and I think, let's see, in Baltimore as well. I mean, it's been very, very clear that long-term kind of investments in good lighting in neighborhoods have a positive economic impact. They have a positive impact in terms of making streets safer and friendlier for pedestrians at night. I think updating the street lighting as well to not just work for vehicles, but to not create as much light pollution, and also just make facial recognition easier, has had a really positive impact. But again, the research is still like, we need more people researching this. We're encouraging folks in lighting to study the data. A lot of lighting programs in schools right now, we're finding that students have an interest in in trying to connect these dots. So I guess the short answer is yes. There's effort behind this, and this conversation here right now that we're having, and whatever you're thinking in your mind of like, oh, I need to do this, or this would be meaningful to try to do it and join the conversation, because we're still building that momentum.
Thanks, Lya. Yeah, I loved kind of what you said when we were talking about this presentation, that there's no action too small, and we can all start in our own communities, in our own homes, our cities, states, countries, and we can start doing things for the better in this world and the community. So I just want to echo that, and thank you for bringing that up. A couple people have been asking like where they can find like a list of your references, kind of a lot of the links. I assume most of those are on the Light Justice website.
Yes, so on lightjustice.org, there's a resources page. There are there are articles and links to organizations there, and we'll be adding to that. We're sort of due for a major update, which I need to make live over the next month. So we're updating that. Also, we have this quarterly. We just released our winter quarterly newsletter. Really encourage you all to sign up there for a newsletter if you're interested, because that's where we'll be bringing in more voices as well, having folks who are, engaged with this work or working on projects. That's where we'll be featuring that and highlighting that. And yeah, just wanted to speak really quick to what you just said, Betty Maya. I think maybe that's the biggest takeaway that I would hope that you all have, is that, just as we know the impact that one light bulb misapplied can have, we know the impact that can have. One fixed light bulb, right, is a huge success. And, one advocate can have an outsized impact. So no single action is too small to be worth taking.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I'll just shout out all of our advocates and IDA members and supporters that are here today. I've been reading through everyone's annual reports about what they've been doing over the past year. And it is incredible how it can go from one conversation with your neighbor to an entire lighting ordinance. And people get it once. They can't unsee it once they've seen it and understand how it really is an impactful thing in the community. So a huge thank you to all of our advocates and everyone here today, because you're definitely really making a big difference in this world. We'll ask a question from Diane Turnshek, who has done also amazing advocacy work on the Pittsburgh lighting ordinance, changing thousands of lights to be dark sky friendly. She said, I heard the term light pressure lately, as in light pressure from a nearby city on a dark site. Is that a common way to speak about sky glow in the lighting community?
Thank you for sharing, Diane. I had not been aware of this term. And I saw your note pop up and I was thinking about that, like that I think is a really great way to frame it. Because these adjacencies, they're never a clear boundary, right? The impact increases as you get, closer to one side of the adjacency or another. And that creep can be difficult to track. And so, yeah, I think light pressure is a fantastic term. And I invite you to, if you remember where you heard that term, I'd be really interested in knowing, and invite you to share more about that, because I think sky glow in the lighting community is something that is more talked about with folks who work on specifically outdoor lighting. And this is something that I forgot to mention the community friendly lighting certification. That's a term that if Bob Parks isn't already using, I'm going to suggest that he adopt that, because that's very helpful to use, I think.
All right, I will add my spotlight so you guys can see me. We are getting close to the end of the hour here, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. Thanks, Alan, for suggesting that people can see me. It's good to see you all. I really just wanted to leave the spotlight on Lya because she is so amazing and incredible. But I think we got through all the questions, actually. There weren't too many today. I think people were really just stunned, and you explained everything really well. So thank you so much for your presentation. If you enjoyed this talk, and you enjoy learning about topics like this and hearing from cool people in the dark sky community, I would highly suggest, if you are not already, that you take a moment to join IDA's Advocate Network. Usually we have people watch a series of 101 videos, but because you attended today's meeting, we'll pop the link in the chat right now so you can sign up immediately. We do monthly advocate action meetings that are really focused on what you can do and sending you home with tools and resources for being active in your community. We have one coming up on March 2nd, which we will be discussing how to give effective dark sky presentations. And then in April, we will be doing a media training for Dark Sky Week, so you can really leverage the dark sky message throughout your community and get people stoked about dark skies. So I'll pop the link in the chat again. It's a simple form. If you would like to sign up, we would love to have you. We also have an online community networking forum, which Lya just joined. So you can chat with her on there. You can also chat with all of IDA staff and all of the advocates from around the world in every corner of the globe. So it is now the top of the hour. I want to give a huge thank you to Lya for your incredible presentation, and a huge thank you to everyone for joining us today. And I will give you the last word if you want to close us out.
Sure. I'm just so impressed by the work that you all are doing, and was so encouraged in joining the panel during the Under One Sky conference last year. So I'm thrilled to have met you all, and I look forward to seeing you on Slack.
Thank you, Lya. Oh, and I forgot to mention that next month we will be doing a panel for women in dark skies and hearing from strong babes all around the world. So join us for that, and please keep being awesome. And again, thank you, Lya, and thank you to everyone. Bye-bye.